I didn't know this in high school, but when I was studying electrical engineering at university, I realized that there are two types of learning. The first one is what I thought was the only one, where you completely understand the material of what is being taught and you have a good knowledge of it. But there's a second type of learning where you don't really understand everything, but you understand the questions enough that you know how to solve the questions even if you don't fully understand the material, because the material is quite difficult. And that's what ended up happening for me with especially the difficult courses in engineering. I would understand enough of the questions and how to solve them, but I didn't deeply understand all the material that after completing a course and even passing it, that I would be able to work at a job where those kind of technical knowledges were required. So in engineering, at least the school that I went to here in Canada, you can branch off in third and fourth year into different electives and specialize in something. You can go into hardware, you can go into software as an electrical engineer, or you can go into power systems, which is what I ended up doing. Largely in part because it's known to be much easier than some of the other electives. And I realized also that I was struggling with the programming courses. I didn't have a full grasp of the knowledge. I was just passing it, but doing enough to pass. Same with the hardware courses. I did it just to pass the courses, but I didn't fully grasp the material to want to even work in that field. I couldn't answer those technical questions if an interviewer asked me for, let's say, Apple or any of the top tech jobs, NVIDIA or what have you. So I chose power in my third and fourth year. And I even worked in the power industry during my co-op jobs during university, working at two big power companies in and around the Greater Toronto area. And then in the last year, which is actually the fifth year it's because it's a 5-year program for us engineers because of the work terms, we had a guest speaker talking about life after university. And this woman said, I know you guys are electrical engineers, but the fact is more than 50%, she mentioned some number, it was more than 50%, but a majority of electrical engineers, after they graduate, end up getting some kind of programming job, software job, right? Because those kind of jobs are the most widely spread throughout the job market. So there aren't as many other engineering jobs, not as much as software. So that wasn't something that I was going to go into because I wasn't good at programming, even after finishing a 5-year program of electrical engineering. So what happened was I barely graduated because I had a severe manic episode during the last term of my undergraduate degree. I was diagnosed bipolar a couple years back, but this episode was particularly bad. And but I was able to graduate and finish one last course online, and I won't get into the details there, but I spiraled into depression following this long, massive 6-month mania, which was very devastating. And after recovering from depression, or at least slowly getting out of it over the next couple years of post-graduation, I started tutoring math and physics because a friend of mine introduced me to this tutor center where high school students come to that tutor center, and so I was one of the tutors there who were helping the high school students with their math and physics homework. And at one point, I was like, okay, it's been a couple years. I'm feeling a bit better. It's time to apply for jobs. So I applied to all the power companies in the Greater Toronto area because that's what I specialized in, right? Or at least that's the electives that I took. And I have previous experience working in the power companies. I actually reached out to my managers in those power companies that I worked under, but they both said, we actually have no control over the hiring process. You have to go through the regular application process, the mass application process, just like everyone else for the new grad programs. And so, and the new grad programs are pretty much the only programs that new grads can get, because the other power positions, the power system positions, they all require a lot of experience. So new grad programs are about the only entry point at which you can get into these big companies, and the competition is fierce because these are big, stable companies where the pay is pretty good. It's a stable job. It's not too stressful, at least for the jobs that I've seen while I was doing co-op there. The power industry is known to be a good job for that, and it's one of those few jobs where you can really have a career there for the rest of your life, just like the old careers back in the day when our parents used to work. It can be a lifelong career, and so I applied to all of those, and it's been a couple years now since I've graduated. There are so many new grads also applying in addition to older grads like me applying. I didn't get a single interview, and I applied to all the consulting jobs that I could possibly find, because those don't require the most technical skills to get in. As long as you have an engineering background, you can apply to engineering consulting. So I applied to all the engineering consulting jobs in the GTA, and I didn't hear back from a single one. Well, I mean, heard back in terms of rejection, sure, but didn't hear back in terms of getting an interview or anything like that. And so I was in a bit of a pickle, and just tutoring few days a week for high school students. And at that point, I thought I was the odd one out. Like, my friends were working in engineering jobs. In fact, one classmate in Toronto, she forwarded my resume to her HR department so that they could possibly fit me into any positions that they might have. But again, even with a warm contact and a reference from my classmate, did not even get anything as an interview, not so much as an interview. And I thought I don't know, maybe it's the gap in my resume where I haven't done anything other than tutoring since graduating, or maybe it's just me, because I also don't have any technical skills. Sure, I have passing grades, good enough grades, but I'm not applying to technical jobs. And at that point, I was applying to jobs that were, let's say, not just for engineers, and anyone who you don't need a technical skill can apply to. So I'm at that point competing against not just engineers, but everyone who was looking for a job that they can do. And none of those jobs were I heard back from, no matter how many I applied to. It was really hard to find, small engineering companies who were looking for an engineer with little to no experience in that field or something like that. It was really hard. So I thought it was something wrong with me. And it's funny because I got a bit of reassurance when I was on the phone with someone. I forget who I was even talking to, but this woman said, when I told her my situation of not being able to find a job post graduation from engineering, even with work term experience, she was like, "Oh, that's not uncommon at all. My brother had to move to a small town in the United States just to get a job post engineering because he couldn't find anything in the Greater Toronto area. And I'm sure I would have had a better chance if I looked outside of my city, right? If I looked like in the buttfuck middle of nowhere. And I've had friends who have done co-op jobs in the middle of nowhere. But hearing their experience, it was really something that I didn't want to do, to move to a tiny little town where I knew nobody and just be isolated there and just work. And it was very depressing from what I heard from my friends who worked in isolated areas during their work terms. And so I didn't apply to those jobs that were so far away from the city. So what happens next? Well, at that point, I got in touch with a friend who said, "Oh, you know what? I'm working for a startup now. I'm in charge of building the app part of this." The startup was focused on sensors being attached to medical devices, and the pressure, for example, of the pinching, let's say, would be transferred onto a measurable graph that is shown in an app. And so the medical professionals could see a number of how much pressure they're putting, how much force they're putting into poking or whatever they're doing with the medical devices. That was the startup. So he said, I'm in charge of the software, in charge of the app. If you want, we're probably unable to pay you, but if you want the experience, you can come on board under me, and I can teach you how to program this app. And I was like, okay, I will take that free chance. So I talked with the I guess it's called CEO. Yeah, CEO of the. I mean, he was a young dude. I think he was about my age. CEO of the company, and he said, okay. I mean, if you're willing to work for free, for sure, under your friends, we can definitely do that. So I started programming for the app, and I found that it was very different programming in real life for an app versus at school doing projects or assignments. It was fairly straightforward in that you just looked up how to do something. Like, for example, let's say how to add a button and link it to a certain page. That would be a simple example. And then I'd look up how to do that, and then I would copy the format and just adjust it to fit the code that I was working with. And I was saying, oh, it's actually working. This is fun. I got a button to work. And then I was doing small tasks like that. If I was completely stuck, then I had my friend who I was working next to who would kind of guide me through it. And so I was working on that for a while for the startup. And at that point, I had two opportunities pop up. Because I was still applying to jobs. And one was, there was a YouTuber, a couple YouTubers whose video course I bought, and they had a company, and they were in the business of making video courses. And because I actually met the CEO of that company, and when there was a Toronto event, and I left a good impression because I was very proactive and volunteering, and then we talked afterwards. They're based in California at the time. I don't know what's happening with them now, but they ended up having a massive layoff not long after. But to get to my story, he said, "Oh, if you're looking for, you said you're looking for a job. We might be have a spot for someone like you, who wants to join our team." And so I had an interview with them, and thinking about the possibility of moving to California by myself, at that time, I didn't think it was what I wanted to do. It wasn't what I wanted to do, and it wasn't was something that I thought would be a good idea. I had a gut feeling. And some of you might be thinking, what are you talking about? Like going to California and working under a YouTuber for making video courses, that sounds like a fantastic opportunity. Why wouldn't you take that? That sounds like a stupid idea that you didn't take it. But it actually turned out that I made the right decision, because soon after that, I went full-blown manic again, and I was hospitalized. So if that happened in California, I have no idea what kind of deep shit I would be in. I don't even want to imagine that. I might not have ended up in the psych ward. I might have ended up shot by the police. I'm not joking when I say that. That was a real possibility. So I'm glad I didn't go to California. What I did end up doing instead was I got an offer from a big telecommunication company that has a monopoly here in Canada for TV, cable, phone services, all that. And so it was a call center job, but after you work at the call center for a certain amount of months or maybe over a year, you had the opportunity to apply within the company and move to different departments or sections of the company. You could shadow, you could learn from different departments and possibly transfer around within the company, right? Because they're so massive. And so this would be a paying job, and it would have opportunity to advance. So, and at the same time, my friend who I was under his wing at the startup, he was quitting that job because he got a different job offer. So I wasn't going to continue in that startup without him. And I got this job offer at this massive company. So I thought, okay, that's a call center job, but I'll do it. So I chose the call center job. And the call center job was at times super nice. The manager's colleagues were really nice. I enjoyed interacting with them. Some of the customers that I had, which were calling about internet service not working, especially the older customers, they were really nice, and we'd have good conversations. They would share some things about their life. They would give me advice, and if you want to earn a lot of money during the summer, you should look into the tourism industry. And they would tell stories about when they used to work in the tourism industry, and I would sometimes have lovely conversations. But that was the best part of the job. Most of the times, the customers are frustrated because their internet's not working, right? And at the worst case, they were outright hostile and yelling and screaming. And I was going manic at that point because I was off my medication for a year. And when you're going manic, I don't know what your preconceptions are about mania and bipolar disorder, but one of the things you probably don't know is during mania, you become hypersensitive to any kind of stimulation, environmental trigger, the energy that other people give off. It becomes amplified like 100-fold. It's crazy. Like if I give you an example, if I'm watching a movie, a sad thing will really hit me so hard that I'm just bawling my eyes out crying. And if someone is yelling or shouting, it feels like the whole world is screaming at me. That's how powerful That's how powerful the impact it has, because you're just hypersensitive to stimulation. So when I'm being yelled at for their internet not working, and I'm trying to calm them down, it's just I realized I started having difficulty breathing. I would have panic attacks. I after the phone call, I would not be able to breathe properly, and I felt like I was just about to die because I couldn't breathe. So I would run down the stairs into the washroom and lock myself in this single washroom, and I would just pant and try and slow down my breathing, because I couldn't breathe. I thought it felt like I was dying, and I needed to calm down. So that wasn't working out. Not only was I waking up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. every morning because I couldn't sleep, and that's the first signs, one of the first symptoms of mania. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was manic, and the job was making me miserable. And then I broke. I went full psychotic mode, which happens in bipolar type 1. And I won't get into the details because it doesn't really matter in this case. All you need to know is that I'm gone and I'm no longer in control. It's like someone else taking over my body. And this manic crazy Paul is in charge until months later, when medication kind of drowsily wakes me out of that slumber, and I realize, oh shit, that was a bad nightmare, but it was all real. All the nightmarish stuff actually happened, and I have these horrible cringe memories of the months that I was fully manic and psychotic. But anyways, so right after I went full psychotic mode, I had the conscience enough to walk in to my job, that workplace. I just walked in, and then it wasn't my work day, but I just walked in and I talked to the managers and I quit. And that was the last corporate job that I had. Since then, I went back to tutoring math, but that was the last office job that I had, and that was 2018. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess one of the messages is, just because you have, well, I have this other factor of being diagnosed bipolar, and that it's kind of sent me off trajectory multiple times throughout my 20s, right? And that's not the only thing that happened in that kind of sent me off trajectory, but that was the big thing. And just because you get an engineering degree, it doesn't guarantee that you're gonna get a solid job after, unless you're willing to move to some remote location. At least that's what ended up happening with me. At this point, it's so far from, I don't have engineering experience other than the few co-op terms that I did during my workplace. Nor do I really want to do an engineering job at this point. But if I am going to continue what happened after, I was broken again as a human after my 6 months plus long another manic episode, and depression following after, because you're just heavily medicated. All the antipsychotics, they block the dopamine receptors, so your dopamine doesn't even function normally. Your brain doesn't function normally at that point. I was just thinking suicidal thoughts for years, at least a year, before that went away. And then slowly had no motivation, but it took a year or two before motivation started to slowly kick in. And it was a very slow climb. And at one point I saw a YouTube video saying, oh, you can learn to code, you can teach yourself to learn to code online for free, and you can get a good paying job from it. And this was maybe 2022, something like that, when I was slowly coming out of my slump of depression. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll go try giving programming a shot. So I was learning programming online, not super hard, but just not going full on all out, but like I was like, oh yeah, I should do it. So I would do it here and there. And I was like, okay, I think this might be doable. And at one point I hit my first roadblock where I was doing a little assignment online, and I was stuck. I was like, why isn't this code working? It looks like it should work. I checked it like 50 times now, and I can't find an error, but it's not working. And so it was right around that point that I was messaging a friend in Korea, and I was telling her that I'm studying programming. And she said, oh, you know what? I've tried programming too, and I realized that it's super stressful, especially the debugging part when you have no idea what to do, because there's no hint really. Usually, sometimes there's no hint as to what's the problem, and you're just stuck. And it was right around that point that she said that. So she said, I heavily suggest you reconsider programming unless you are suited to that, because not everyone is suited to that. And so when I was stuck, I reached out to my programming expert friend who has been programming since he was in the 3rd grade and taught himself using books, because back then there weren't even resources online for coding. So this guy doing a PhD in software, and he looked at my code and he said, wow, your code is so shitty. It's so bad. And he looked at it for about 5 minutes in silence. And he said, I know what to do. And he put a negative in front of the 1. And then the code worked. And I was like, what the hell? How did you know how to do this? And then he showed the flaw in my logic of what actually ended up happening, even though I didn't intend. And he said that's not how a good code would be written for this problem, but he still used my shitty code and made it work by just adding a -1, and the code worked. And like that was a sign that he was really good, right? Because he can understand shitty code and make it work, even though it's shitty code, and he would have written in it a completely different way that would have been a way better solution. So I was both impressed and also realized that, oh my God, I really don't know if I can deal with this kind of being stuck frustration on a regular basis, on a repeated basis. And he told me, he said, he was telling me this. He said, you've told me how much you hated programming in university. And I said, yeah. I said, but I thought it might be different because having tried app development for a bit, it wasn't as bad. And he says, it's only because you got a taste of it while you were working there at the startup. He said, some people really have the personality for programming, and based on what you've told me and based on what I know about you, programming does not suit you. You will be so miserable doing it. And I was like, oh, I think you're absolutely right, because I felt that to my core, how much I hated being stuck debugging, not having a clue of what to do. So so that's and then it's funny because that's the moment that I said, okay, maybe I won't do programming. Maybe I won't do this at all. Maybe I'll do video editing instead as a job. And then I was working on my YouTube videos at the time, posting a bit more. And it was right around that time, I think it was 2022, 2023, something like that, where there were these massive tech layoffs where all these software developers, programmers, they're being fired. And actually, one of the people that I knew got fired from her job. And because she's here by herself, her family's somewhere in China, I believe. So she had to pay rent and earn a living. So she was working at a grocery store because she got laid off from her software job. And she was applying to every software job possible, but there were like at least 600 people applying for maybe one position. And the competition was fierce because there were so many people laid off at the time. And I realized, oh shit, just because you know how to program and code doesn't mean that it's even a stable job. She has a master's degree in programming and that related field, and yet she's still having trouble because the competition is so fierce. And she was laid off through no fault of her own. It was just because the company wasn't doing well. And I was like, oh God, that's not even a stable job. And so what I'm doing now is that I have been doing for the past couple of years is focusing on YouTube. And YouTube is a slow game. It takes a long time to grow for the majority of people. Of course, you can find exceptions who grow super fast. You'll find exceptions here and there, but for the majority of people, YouTube is really slow. But having said that, I did get to the point where I am making a bit of money every day through AdSense. I got monetized. Right now, it's about roughly $2 per day on average. Of course, if a video goes viral, then it spikes for several days. But on average, because of my older videos all accumulating together, it's roughly $2 a day that I'm earning. And it's not enough, right? That's not a full-time job yet in terms of an income. But based on what I've seen of comments that I've seen, people who really connect with the videos that I make, I have a strong feeling, also based on what other YouTubers say on their experience, I have a strong feeling I am finding my audience slowly, and it is taking time, but I'm growing steadily, and it'll take a long time. Maybe it'll take longer than I think, but I'm experimenting. I'm sharing my experience, my thoughts, and finding people who relate with that. So I have a promising feeling about this working as being able to, provide with a full-time income at some point. I'm not living by myself. I'm with my mom, and I'm turning 35 at the end of this year, close to the end of the year. And, I guess it's a timeline thing. At some point, I'm probably going to have to supplement my YouTubing while it's growing with something else that will, one of the things I've been thinking of is like maybe working at a gym, something like that. So not gonna go, I don't even think it's possible to go into anything engineering related, not that I really want to do that, but doing something part-time that won't suck me dry, where I can still focus on YouTube and have that as my main and grow that over time until eventually that becomes the only income that I need. That is the plan. And like I am seeing growth. When I first was monetized, I was making probably less than 50 cents a day. Now it's getting close to $2 a day. It's slow growth on average, the baseline, right? There are spikes here and there, but the baseline is growing. I can see progress. Even within the last few months, I can see progress. It's just a slow game. And I don't know if I'm going to have like a viral moment that propels me leagues forward at some point. But in my experience, in general, even with a fairly viral moment, it goes back to a baseline that is growing steadily. And that has been my experience of the game of YouTube so far.
Familiarity is a way to get there. That just takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
Which is totally fine.
I'm not in YouTube just to get views, because if I was, I would be making content like commenting on Korean content and translating some of the programs and giving my take on it. That would have gotten me a way better, higher view count. But the reason I'm doing YouTube is because I want to express the things that I want to say. I want to make videos that I want to make instead of just making videos for the sake of views. So there's not just a business component, but an artist component too, where I'm not doing it just as a content creator to make money. I want to make stuff that I want to make. And that's why I like YouTube in the first place. Finding people who connect with what I put out, what I like putting out. So it's been a good journey so far, and it will continue to be a long journey, but I'm gonna do this for decades. It's not something that I'm thinking of only doing for a few years and then quitting. So in the meantime, I'll probably have to support that with something else at a certain point. But yeah, that's where I am at now at 34 years old. I didn't expect my life would turn out like this when I was a teenager thinking about the future. But you really have no idea what the future holds. My family has faced things because of me and otherwise that some setbacks that we never anticipated. Yeah, you never know what will happen. But just like I heard in a YouTube video that I watched recently by Landon Parrott, he said,
all of these things that you imagine that are just out there in the future that you want to do, that you need to do, they're not real. They haven't happened yet, so they can't be real. What you can see, touch, hear, everything else, this whole world of what you need to do, the money you need to make, the clout you need to achieve, the friends that you don't have, the house that you don't have, is all in fairy tale land. You can't see it, you can't touch it. It is objectively fake, non-existent. So stop living in the non-existent world 24/7. I've suffered a great many catastrophes in my life. Most of them never happened. Mark Twain.
oh my God. That's something that I have to remind myself again and again. Just focus day to day. What am I doing now? So I've left a lot of stuff out. I'll probably cover more stories of some of my past in upcoming videos. All right, here comes the pet montage. 1% better every day, baby.
Oh, Tigger brought Ducky. Oh, Tigger, you brought Ducky. Oh, Tigger. You fetched me? Sweet Tigger. Thank you, Tigger. Thank you, Tigger.
Muffin is behind my monitor. So cute. He likes this place. Keeps me company. He's purring. Oh, Mochi was barking at this raccoon. Maybe it's breeding again and having raccoon babies. So I guess guess we'll see raccoon baby soon. It's still pretty cold, but I guess this is its nest for now. Oh well. Guess I'll just leave it be.